The rain turned her blood to pink rivers on the pavement. Mara Lane crawled forward, one arm useless, the other clutching her ribs where his boot had landed. Somewhere behind her, he was still shouting. Her ex-husband, the man who'd promised forever and delivered fists instead. She had to get home. Ellie was waiting. Just 3 more blocks. But her vision blurred, her knees buckled, and the city swallowed her whole. Then headlights cut through the storm, and a voice, calm, absolute, said the words that would change everything. You're safe now. If you want to see how Mara survives this brutal night and builds a new life from the ashes, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Book. The rain came down like judgment, turning the Brooklyn streets into rivers of filth and forgotten things. Mara Lane stumbled through it all, one hand pressed against her side where the pain bloomed hot and sharp, the other reaching for anything that might hold her up. A lamppost, a mailbox, the brick wall of a shuttered bodega. Her vision swam. The world tilted sideways and she went with it, her shoulders slamming into wet concrete. She'd left her phone in the apartment. Stupid. But when Derek's fist had come flying at her face for the 3rd time that night, when he'd grabbed Ellie's stuffed rabbit and thrown it across the room just to watch their daughter cry, Mara had stopped thinking about phones or purses or anything except getting out. She'd shoved Ellie into the neighbor's apartment, Mrs. Chen, blessed Mrs. Chen who asked no questions, and locked her door the moment Mara pressed her baby into those wrinkled hands. And then she'd run. Derek had followed. The fight had spilled into the stairwell, then the lobby, then the street. He'd caught her half a block from the building, his fingers digging into her arm hard enough to bruise bone deep. The first slap had wrung her ears, the second had split her lip. When she'd finally broken free and run again, he'd thrown a beer bottle that shattered against her shoulder blade, glass embedding itself in a constellation of small burning stars across her back. Now she was 3 blocks away and he'd stopped chasing, probably went back for another drink, or maybe to smash what was left of their apartment. It didn't matter. All that mattered was getting back to Ellie. 3 blocks. She could do 3 blocks. Except her legs had other ideas. Mara's knee gave out and she went down hard, her palms scraping across the sidewalk. The rain hammered her back, finding every cut, every bruise, every place where Derek's rage had left its mark. She tried to push herself up, but her left arm wouldn't cooperate. Something wrong with the shoulder, something that sent white-hot lightning through her whole body when she moved it. Get up, she whispered to herself. Get up, get up, get up. But the world was growing soft around the edges, darkness creeping in from the sides like curtains closing on a stage. She could hear her own breathing, ragged and wet, could taste blood, could feel the rain washing everything away, all the fight, all the fear, all the desperate fury that had kept her moving this far. 3 blocks, might as well be 300. She pressed her forehead to the concrete and tried to remember how to breathe. That's when the headlights found her. Mara squinted against the sudden brightness, one hand coming up to shield her eyes. A car had pulled up to the curb, something expensive, sleek, and black, and completely out of place in this neighborhood where rust buckets and old Hondas were the local currency. The engine purred like a living thing. For a moment, nothing happened. The car just sat there, headlights burning, while Mara lay broken on the sidewalk and the rain kept falling. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out into the storm, and the first thing Mara noticed was that he didn't hurry, didn't run or rush or show any sign that the downpour bothered him at all. He moved with the kind of easy confidence that suggested the weather wouldn't dare touch him without permission. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than Mara made in 6 months, and somehow it stayed crisp despite the rain. His shoes, leather, polished to a mirror shine, barely seemed to touch the wet pavement. He approached slowly, hands visible, palms open, non-threatening. But there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested threat was always an option, just not one he needed right now. "Easy," he said, his voice cutting through the storm with surprising clarity. "Don't try to move." Mara tried anyway, some animal part of her brain screaming that strange men in dark cars meant danger, meant more pain, meant things worse than Derek's fists. She managed to get one knee under her before her body staged a full rebellion, and she collapsed again with a gasp that tasted like copper. The man crouched down beside her, close enough that she could see his face now. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing, a jaw that looked like it had been carved from marble. He couldn't have been much older than 35, but something in those eyes suggested he'd lived several lifetimes already. "You're bleeding," he said, which was possibly the most obvious statement anyone had ever made in the history of obvious statements. But his tone wasn't mocking, just factual. "How bad?" "I'm fine," Mara lied, because that's what you said to strange men on dark streets, even when you were very much not fine. One dark eyebrow lifted a fraction of an inch. "You're face down on a sidewalk in a rainstorm with what looks like a dislocated shoulder and at least 3 broken ribs." "Try again." "I need to get home." Her voice came out thready, weak. She hated it. "My daughter. Where's home?" Mara hesitated. Giving out her address felt dangerous. Everything felt dangerous. But Ellie was waiting, and Mrs. Chen was 83 and probably terrified, and Mara needed to get back, needed to hold her baby and prove that they were both still alive. "Marlowe Street," she whispered, "building with the blue door." Recognition flickered across the man's face. "That's 3 blocks north. You're not walking 3 blocks. Before she could protest, he'd pulled out his phone and pressed a single button. Someone answered immediately. Marlowe Street, building with the blue door. There's a child there with an elderly neighbor. Get them somewhere safe." "No, I don't care what you have to tell the neighbor. Keep the child calm and wait for further instructions." He hung up and turned back to Mara, who was staring at him with a mixture of confusion and rising panic. "What did you do?" she demanded, trying again to stand. "You can't just... Who do you think—" "I think you're in no condition to take care of anyone, including yourself," he said calmly. "And I think your daughter is better off with my people than alone with a terrified old woman while you bleed out on a street corner. Now, we can do this easy or we can do this hard, but either way, you're getting in that car and we're getting you to a doctor." "I don't know you." Mara's voice cracked on the last word. Something softened in those dark eyes. Not much, but enough. "No," he agreed. "You don't. My name is Luca Moretti, and right now I'm the only help you've got." The name meant nothing to her. Should it have meant something? The way he said it suggested it should, like he was announcing himself as someone important, someone who mattered. But Mara's world had shrunk to the size of a 1-bedroom apartment in a shitty building with a broken elevator. And in that world, names like Luca Moretti didn't appear. "I can't afford a doctor," she said, which was true. She couldn't afford much of anything these days. "Did I ask you to pay?" "Nothing's free." Now he smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "No," he agreed. "Nothing is. But sometimes the price isn't what you expect. Come on, you're going into shock." He was right. She could feel it happening, the world growing distant, her thoughts scattering like birds. The pain had gone from sharp to dull, which probably wasn't a good sign. When he reached for her, she didn't have the strength to pull away. Luca lifted her like she weighed nothing at all, one arm beneath her knees, the other supporting her back. Mara bit back a scream as the movement jostled her injured shoulder, but he adjusted his grip almost immediately, finding a position that hurt less. "Sorry," he murmured, carrying her to the car. The passenger door opened as they approached, someone inside reaching across to push it wide. And then Mara was being settled into leather seats that probably cost more than her entire apartment. The interior smelled like expensive cologne and new car and something else, something darker. Gunpowder, maybe. Or violence waiting to happen. Luca slid into the driver's seat and the car pulled away from the curb so smoothly it barely felt like movement at all. The storm continued its assault on the windows, but inside the car it was warm and dry and utterly surreal. "Where are you taking me?" Mara asked, fighting to keep her eyes open. "Friend of mine runs a private clinic. Discreet. They'll fix you up, no questions asked, no paperwork filed." "Why?" He glanced at her, those dark eyes unreadable. "Why what?" "Why are you helping me?" For a long moment he didn't answer. The car turned left, then right, navigating streets Mara didn't recognize. Finally, "Because you needed help. That usually enough?" "Not in my experience." Something that might have been approval flickered across his face. "Smart. You're right to be suspicious. Most people who offer help want something in return." He paused. "I'm not most people." "Then what are you?" "Complicated," he said, and left it at that. The clinic turned out to be a brownstone in a neighborhood that screamed money. Tree-lined streets, fancy cars, buildings that looked like they'd been standing since New York was New Amsterdam. Luca parked in a private garage and came around to help Mara out of the car. She tried to walk on her own and made it exactly 3 steps before her legs decided they were done cooperating. He caught her before she hit the ground. "Stubborn," he observed. "Scared," she corrected. "Of me." "Of everything." He studied her for a moment, and something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like understanding. "Fair enough," he said quietly. "Come on, let's get you patched up." The clinic's entrance was through an unmarked door at the back of the building. Inside, it looked more like an upscale hotel than a medical facility. Marble floors, soft lighting, art on the walls that probably cost more than Mara had made in her entire life. A woman in expensive scrubs appeared immediately, her expression professionally neutral as she took in Mara's condition. "Exam room 2, she said to Luca, not bothering with questions. "Dr. Williams is ready." "Thank you, Teresa." Exam room 2 was all gleaming chrome and sterile surfaces, but somehow still managed to feel less cold than any hospital Mara had ever been in. The doctor was a middle-aged black woman with gentle hands and a no-nonsense attitude that Mara appreciated immediately. "What happened?" she asked, already cutting away Mara's ruined shirt. Mara's eyes went to Luca, who stood by the door with his arms crossed, watching. "It's okay," he said. "Dr. Williams is with me. Anything you say stays in this room." "My ex-husband," Mara said finally, the words tasting like ash. "He has a temper." Dr. Williams's jaw tightened fractionally, but her hand stayed steady. "First time?" "No." "Going to be the last?" Mara thought about Ellie, about Mrs. Chen, about the way Derek's eyes had looked right before his fist came flying. "Yes," she said, and meant it. "Good." The doctor began her examination, professional and thorough. Mara tried not to flinch when she touched the worst of the bruises. Dislocated shoulder, 3 cracked ribs, multiple contusions, lacerations requiring stitches. "You're lucky. Could have been worse." "Doesn't feel lucky," Mara muttered. "Lucky you're alive," the doctor clarified. "Lucky someone found you. This shoulder needed to be reset immediately, or you'd be looking at surgery and months of physical therapy." She glanced at Luca. "Out." "I'll be right outside," he said to Mara, and left without argument. The door clicked shut, and Dr. Williams began the painful process of resetting Mara's shoulder. "You know who that man is?" she asked conversationally, like she wasn't currently causing Mara the worst pain of her life. "Said his name was Luca Moretti," Mara gasped out between clenched teeth. "That mean anything to you?" "Should it?" The doctor paused, studying Mara's face. "Maybe you're better off not knowing. Then again, maybe you deserve to know what kind of life you're stepping into." She resumed her work. "Luca Moretti runs half of Brooklyn. The other half belongs to people who wish they were him. He's what you might call an alternative entrepreneur." Well, even through the pain, Mara understood. "He's a criminal. He's complicated. Dr. Williams echoed Luca's earlier words. Known him 15 years. Seen him do terrible things. Also seen him do impossibly good things. The world isn't as simple as we'd like it to be. She stepped back. Shoulders done. Going to hurt like hell for a few weeks, but you'll heal. Now let's deal with these ribs. An hour later, Mara sat on the exam table wearing scrubs that Teresa had provided, her old clothes having been disposed of as unsalvageable. Her shoulder was immobilized in a sling, her ribs tightly wrapped, the various cuts and scrapes cleaned and bandaged. Dr. Williams had given her something for the pain that made the world feel soft and slightly unreal. Luca knocked once and entered, his eyes swept over her, cataloging the damage. Better? Different, Mara said. Your man, the one you sent to get Ellie. Is she? She's fine. Marco took her to one of my properties. Safe, comfortable, the neighbors with her. We told her there was a gas leak in your building and everyone needed to evacuate. She bought it. Relief flooded through Mara so intensely it brought tears to her eyes. I need to see her. You will. But first we need to talk. About what? About what happens next. Luca pulled up a chair and sat down, his movements deliberate. Your ex-husband, Derek Lane. He's going to come looking for you. How do you know his name? I know a lot of things. He pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, turned it to show her. Derek Lane, age 37. 3 prior arrests for assault, 2 convictions, served 8 months total. Currently on probation. Works sporadically as a mechanic, drinks heavily, gambles more than he can afford to lose. Ring any bells? Mara stared at the screen. It was Derek's mugshot from his last arrest. That dead-eyed stare she knew too well. How did you get this so fast? I have resources. He pocketed the phone. The question is, what do you want to do about him? What do you mean? I mean, Luca said carefully, that you have options. You could go to the police, file a report, get a restraining order, though I notice you didn't do any of that tonight. Restraining orders are just paper, Mara said bitterly. They don't stop fists. No, he agreed. They don't. So what has stopped them? The question hung in the air between them. Mara knew what he was really asking, knew that this man, this complicated criminal with his expensive suits and his private clinic, was offering her something that no court ever could. I just want him gone, she whispered. I want him so far away from me and Ellie that he never finds us again. That can be arranged? How? Luca leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on hers. There are ways to make sure someone understands that pursuing a particular course of action would be extremely unwise. Ways that don't involve violence, but do involve absolute clarity about consequences. You do that? For a stranger? Yes. Why? His jaw tightened. Let's just say I have personal reasons for not liking men who beat women and leave it at that. There was history in those words, pain buried deep. Mara recognized it because she carried her own. What's the price? She asked, because nothing was free. He'd said so himself. No price. Not the way you're thinking. Luca stood, straightening his jacket. I'm going to take you to see your daughter. You're going to stay somewhere safe while you heal, and when you're ready, we'll figure out the next step. That's it. And Derek? I'll handle Derek. How? Do you really want the details? Mara thought about Ellie's face when Derek threw her rabbit. Thought about the bruises she'd covered with makeup for 3 years, the lies she'd told, the fear she'd swallowed down like poison. Thought about tonight, about crawling through rain and blood while he laughed somewhere behind her. No, she said. I don't. Then trust me when I say it'll be handled. Clean, permanent, legal. Legal? A ghost of a smile. I have lawyers for days. Derek Lane violated his probation the moment he laid hands on you tonight. Getting him sent back to prison isn't hard. Keeping him there long enough for you to disappear? That takes resources, which I have. It sounded too easy, too good. But Mara was tired of fighting alone, tired of being scared, tired of pretending she had any control over a life that had spiraled into chaos years ago. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? Help me, please. Something passed across Luca's face. Satisfaction, maybe, or relief. He offered her his hand. Come on, let's get you to your daughter. The car ride took them to Manhattan, to a building so expensive it had an actual doorman in a uniform. Mara felt acutely aware of her borrowed scrubs and bandaged appearance as Luca guided her through a lobby that looked like a museum. They took an elevator to the 20th floor, and when the doors opened, it was directly into a penthouse apartment. Ellie's voice hit her before Mara had even stepped out of the elevator. Mommy! Her daughter came running, all wild dark curls and gap-toothed smile, and Mara dropped to her knees despite the screaming protest from her ribs. She caught Ellie with her good arm and held on tight, breathing in the scent of her daughter's shampoo and feeling, for the first time all night, like maybe things might actually be okay. Baby, she whispered into Ellie's hair. I'm here. I'm here. Mrs. Chen said there was a gas leak, Ellie said, her words muffled against Mara's shoulder. She said we had to leave fast. Where were you? I was scared. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Mara pulled back enough to look at her daughter's face, checking for tears, for fear, for any sign that tonight had damaged her. But we're safe now. Everything's going to be okay. You're hurt. Ellie's small fingers touched the edge of the bandage visible above Mara's sling. Did Daddy do this? The question landed like a punch. Mara had tried so hard to shield Ellie from the worst of Derek's violence, but 5-year-olds weren't stupid. They saw things, understood more than adults wanted to believe. Yeah, Mara said, because she was done lying. He did. Is he coming here? No, baby, he's not. How do you know? Mara glanced up at Luca, who stood near the elevator with his hands in his pockets, watching the reunion with an unreadable expression. Because someone very strong is going to make sure of it. Ellie followed her mother's gaze and seemed to notice Luca for the first time. She studied him with the frank curiosity of childhood. Who are you? Luca, he said simply. Did you help my mom? I did. Thank you. Ellie's voice was solemn, adult serious in the way of children who'd grown up too fast. You're welcome. Mrs. Chen appeared from a doorway off the main room, her face creased with worry. Mara, merciful heavens, child, what happened to you? I'm okay, Mrs. Chen, just a little banged up. A little? The old woman's eyes swept over the sling, the bandages, the bruises already purpling on Mara's face. That man finally went too far, didn't he? Yes, Mara said quietly. But it's over now. Is it? Mrs. Chen looked at Luca with surprising shrewdness. And who are you, young man? Some kind of good Samaritan? Something like that, Luca replied. Mrs. Chen's skepticism was obvious, but she seemed to decide against pressing the issue. Well, I suppose I should be getting home, though I'm not sure what home I'm getting to if there's truly a gas leak. The building's fine, Luca said. That was just a necessary fiction, but I'd appreciate it if you'd keep the fiction alive for a while longer. Tell your neighbors that Mara and Ellie had to stay with family while their apartment was inspected. Can you do that? Mrs. Chen's eyes narrowed. You're asking me to lie. I'm asking you to help keep them safe. Sometimes those things overlap. The old woman studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to Mara. Is this what you want? Mara looked at her daughter, who'd plastered herself to Mara's side and showed no signs of letting go. Looked at this penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows and its leather furniture and its promise of safety. Looked at Luca Moretti, this complicated criminal who'd pulled her off a street corner for reasons she still didn't fully understand. Yes, she said. It is. All right then. Mrs. Chen gathered her things, a worn purse, a cardigan, the book she'd apparently been reading to Ellie. You call me if you need anything, child? Anything at all. I don't care what time it is. I will. Thank you, Mrs. Chen, for everything. After the old woman left, Luca showed them through the apartment. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The master bedroom had been prepared for Mara. Fresh sheets, towels laid out, even pajamas in her size sitting folded on the bed. How did you know what size I wore? She asked. I'm good at estimating, Luca said. Ellie's room is next door. Marco brought some of her things from your apartment. Clothes, toys, whatever he thought she'd want. If anything's missing, let me know. Ellie had already disappeared into the second bedroom, and her squeal of delight suggested she'd found something exciting. Mara started to follow, but Luca caught her good arm gently. Get some rest, he said. You're safe here. I've got security on the building, cameras everywhere. Nobody gets up here without my knowing about it. When will you deal with Derek? Tomorrow. Maybe the day after. Depends on some logistics. And then? And then you and Ellie can decide what comes next. You want to go back to your old life? I'll make sure Derek stays out of it. You want to start fresh somewhere else? I can arrange that too. Or, he paused, or what? Or you stay here, for a while. Figure things out without having to look over your shoulder every 5 minutes. It was too much, too generous. Men like Luca Moretti didn't do this kind of thing without wanting something in return. Why? She asked again, because she still didn't understand. He looked away, jaw working. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before. 7 years ago, someone I cared about died because I wasn't paying attention, because I was too focused on business, on building an empire, on proving I was someone who mattered. I missed the signs that she was in trouble, and by the time I noticed, it was too late. His dark eyes came back to Mara. I can't fix that. Can't bring her back. But I can make damn sure it doesn't happen to someone else. Not on my watch. The grief in his voice was old, but not buried, a wound that had scarred over but never fully healed. Mara recognized it intimately. She carried similar wounds herself. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. Yeah, me too. He straightened, and just like that, the vulnerability was gone, locked away behind that mask of control. You should rest. Dr. Williams said the pain medication might make you drowsy. Will you be here? In the apartment, I mean. No, I have my own place across town, but I'll be back tomorrow to check on you. He pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. My number. You need anything at all, you call, day or night. Mara took the card, her fingers brushing his. Thank you, she said, the words feeling inadequate for everything he'd done. Don't thank me yet, Luca said. We haven't gotten to the hard part. He left without explaining what the hard part might be, and Mara stood in the middle of the expensive bedroom holding a stranger's business card and wondering what she'd just agreed to. In the next room, Ellie was singing to herself, some made-up song about princesses and castles. The sound of her daughter's voice, happy and unafraid, was enough to quiet the doubts. Whatever came next, whatever price Luca Moretti eventually demanded, it couldn't be worse than what she'd left behind. Mara changed into the pajamas. They fit perfectly, which was somehow both impressive and unsettling, and went to check on Ellie. Her daughter had indeed found something exciting, a collection of stuffed animals, including a rabbit that looked exactly like the one Derek had destroyed. Look, Mommy! Ellie held it up triumphantly. It's Mr. Hops! Well, not Mr. Hops, but he looks just like him. He does, Mara agreed, settling carefully on the edge of the bed. What should we call this one? Ellie thought seriously. Mr. Hops, too. Very creative. I know. Ellie snuggled into the bed, which was easily 3 times the size of her bed at home. Mommy? Are we really safe here? Yes, baby, we really are. Promise? Mara thought about Luca's eyes, about the quiet certainty in his voice when he said Derek would be handled. Thought about the security cameras and the doorman and the fact that this building probably cost more per month than she'd made in a year. Promise, she said. Ellie's eyes were already drifting closed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Okay. Love you, Mommy. Love you too, baby, more than anything. Mara sat there until Ellie's breathing evened out into sleep, then made her way back to the master bedroom. Her entire body ached, the pain medication wearing off just enough to remind her of every bruise, every cut, every place where Derek's violence had left its mark. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the city spread below like a carpet of lights. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably nursing a bottle and planning his next move. Somewhere out there, Luca Moretti was setting plans in motion that would change everything. And here, 20 floors up in a borrowed penthouse, Mara Lane was trying to figure out who she'd become now that she'd stopped running. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, battered, bandaged, but still standing, still breathing, still fighting. It would have to be enough. Morning came through the floor-to-ceiling windows like an invasion, all golden light and impossible brightness. Mara woke to unfamiliar softness. Egyptian cotton sheets, a mattress that didn't have springs poking through, silence instead of the usual symphony of car horns and shouting neighbors. For 3 disoriented seconds, she didn't remember where she was. Then her shoulder screamed its reminder and everything came flooding back. Derek. The rain. Luca Moretti's dark eyes watching her like she was a puzzle he'd decided to solve. She sat up carefully, testing her body's limits. The ribs protested but didn't shriek. The shoulder throbbed dully beneath its sling. Someone had left water and pain medication on the nightstand. She didn't remember those being there last night, which meant someone had come in while she slept. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something closer to gratitude. The medication went down easy. The water tasted expensive somehow, filtered and perfect. Everything in this place was perfect, which made Mara feel like a stain on expensive fabric. She found Ellie already awake in the kitchen, sitting at the breakfast bar with a plate of pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. A woman Mara didn't recognize stood at the stove, mid-40s with kind eyes and efficient movements. "Good morning," the woman said, not missing a beat as she flipped another pancake. "I'm Rosa. Mr. Moretti asked me to make sure you and your daughter had everything you needed. There's coffee if you want it, or tea, or I can make you whatever sounds good." "Coffee's fine," Mara said carefully, still trying to process the fact that there was a stranger in the apartment making breakfast. "Thank you." "Mommy, look!" Ellie held up a forkful of pancake. "They're shaped like Mickey. Rosa says she can make any shape I want tomorrow. I'm thinking dinosaurs." "Dinosaurs sound good, baby." Mara accepted the mug of coffee Rosa handed her and tried not to wince at how perfectly it was made. Cream, no sugar, exactly the way she liked it. "How did you know?" Rosa smiled. "Mr. Moretti is thorough. He sent over your preferences yesterday." "He doesn't know my preferences. I only met him last night. He's very good at gathering information quickly." Rosa turned back to the stove, clearly considering the subject closed. Mara sipped her coffee and tried to shake the unsettled feeling creeping up her spine. Luca Moretti had known her clothing size, known how she took her coffee, known enough about her apartment to send someone to gather Ellie's favorite things. That level of detail didn't happen overnight, which meant he'd been digging into her life with the kind of thoroughness that should have been alarming. It was alarming. She just couldn't muster the energy to care when the result was her daughter eating Mickey Mouse pancakes in a safe apartment instead of cowering in a one-bedroom while Derek raged. Rosa left after breakfast, promising to return that evening to make dinner. The moment the door closed behind her, the silence felt crushing. Mara wasn't used to quiet. Their old apartment had been all noise, Neighbors fighting, televisions blaring through thin walls, Derek's unpredictable storms of anger. This penthouse existed in some other realm where sound came muted and soft. Ellie seemed perfectly content, already spreading out on the living room floor with a collection of toys that had mysteriously appeared in her room. Mara watched her daughter play and tried to plan next steps. She needed to call her boss at the diner, if she still had a job after not showing up yesterday. Needed to figure out what came after this, after Luca's generosity ran out and reality reasserted itself. Her phone was gone, left behind in the chaos of last night. The thought of being disconnected from the world should have bothered her more than it did. She was still trying to decide what to do when the elevator chimed and Luca stepped out, carrying a paper bag from a bakery that probably had a 6-month wait list. "Morning," he said, setting the bag on the kitchen counter. "Brought bagels. Rosa said you hadn't eaten much." "Rosa reports to you." "Everyone reports to me." He said it matter-of-factly, without arrogance. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." "That's better than yesterday, then." "Yesterday you looked like the truck backed up and hit you again." He pulled out a bagel, already sliced and prepared exactly the way she would have done it herself. "Eat." Mara took it mostly because arguing seemed exhausting. The bagel was perfect. Of course it was perfect. Everything in Luca Moretti's orbit seemed to exist in a state of expensive perfection. "I need my phone," she said between bites. "And I need to call my work. Let them know I'm not coming in." "You don't work at the diner anymore." The bagel turned to ash in her mouth. "Excuse me?" "I had someone call yesterday. Told them you had a family emergency and wouldn't be returning. They sent your last paycheck and personal items." He gestured to a box sitting on the counter that Mara hadn't noticed. "Your phone wasn't in your apartment, but I got you a new one. Same number." He held out an iPhone that probably cost more than her rent. Mara stared at it like it might bite. "You can't just quit my job for me." "I can, and I did." No apology in his voice, just statement of fact. "That diner paid you $8 an hour plus tips that barely covered childcare. You were working yourself into an early grave for scraps. Those scraps fed my daughter. And now she's fed without you having to serve coffee to assholes who don't tip." He set the phone on the counter between them. "Take it. It's already set up. Your contacts, photos, everything transferred over." Mara's hands clenched into fists. "You had no right." "Probably not, but I did it anyway." "Why?" The word came out sharp, all her confusion and fear and anger distilled into a single syllable. "Why do you care what job I have or don't have? Why any of this?" Luca leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying her with those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to bone. "You want the truth? That'd be refreshing." "The truth is I don't know entirely. Something about finding you on that sidewalk." He stopped, jaw working. "It reminded me of things I'd rather forget. And I have the resources to help, so I am. That's simple." "Nothing's that simple." "No," he agreed. "It's not. But it's as simple as I can make it right now." He pushed off the counter. "Derek's being picked up this afternoon. Parole violation. Assault charges. He'll be processed and held without bail. My lawyers are already working with the DA's office to make sure he stays locked up for a good long time." The relief was immediate and overwhelming. "How long?" 3 to 5 years minimum if everything goes according to plan. And it will. 3 to 5 years. Ellie would be 8 or 9 before Derek could even think about coming after them. Old enough to understand, maybe. Old enough to remember why they'd left. "What happens after that?" Mara asked. "After he gets out?" "By then, you'll be long gone. New city, new name if you want it, new life. He'll never find you." It sounded like witness protection, like something from a movie. "You can really do that?" "I can do a lot of things, Mara. Most of them would horrify you. But yes, I can definitely relocate 2 people and make sure they stay disappeared." She believed him. That was the terrifying part. She absolutely believed this man could erase her old life and build her a new one from scratch. In the meantime, Luca continued, you're staying here. Rosa will come by twice a day, morning and evening. There's security on the building 24/7. My number's programmed into that phone. Anything happens, anything feels wrong, you call. How long is in the meantime? As long as it takes. He started toward the elevator, then paused. Oh, and there's a bank card in the phone case. Emergency expenses, whatever you and Ellie need. Don't worry about the limit. I'm not taking your money. He turned back, one eyebrow raised. How do you plan to buy food? Clothes? Anything? I'll figure it out. Stubborn, but he said it like a compliment. Fine. Consider it a loan. When you get back on your feet, you can pay me back if it makes you feel better. But in the meantime, your daughter needs things, and you need to heal. So take the damn card and stop making this harder than it needs to be. The elevator arrived, and he stepped inside, one hand holding the door. I'll check in tomorrow. Call if you need anything before then. Then he was gone, and Mara was left standing in the expensive kitchen, holding an expensive phone with a bank card that probably had more money on it than she'd see in a lifetime. Ellie wandered in from the living room, Mr. Hops too tucked under one arm. Was that Luca? Yeah, baby. I like him. He has a nice voice. Mara thought about Luca's voice, the way it cut through chaos with absolute certainty. Yeah, she said quietly. He does. The next 3 days established a rhythm that felt both surreal and dangerously comfortable. Rosa arrived at 8 every morning with breakfast and left after cleaning up, returning at 6 for dinner. A doctor came by on day 2 to check Mara's injuries. Not Dr. Williams, but someone equally professional and discreet. He adjusted her medications, gave her exercises for the shoulder, and told her she was healing faster than expected. Luca appeared once a day, always bringing something. Groceries Rosa had requested, a tablet loaded with kids' movies for Ellie, a laptop for Mara in case she wanted to look for jobs online. He never stayed long, just checked in to make sure they had what they needed and gave updates on Derek's situation. The arrest had gone smoothly. Derek was being held in Rikers. The DA was being very cooperative about keeping him there. Everything was going according to plan. Mara should have been relieved. Instead, she felt like she was living in a bubble that would eventually pop, depositing her right back into chaos. On day 4, the bubble developed its first crack. Mara was doing the shoulder exercises the doctor had prescribed when her new phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Marlene. Who's asking? Detective Sarah Chen, NYPD. I'm investigating an assault complaint filed by Derek Lane. He claims you attacked him 4 nights ago and that you've kidnapped his daughter. I'd like to ask you some questions. The world tilted sideways. Mara grabbed the counter for support, her healing shoulder screaming in protest. That's not what happened. I'm sure it's not, but I still need to hear your side. Can you come down to the precinct? I'm injured. I can barely walk. A pause. Mr. Lane has visible injuries as well. Claims you hit him with a baseball bat. The sheer audacity of the lie stole Mara's breath. He's lying. He beat me. I have medical records, witnesses. Then this should be easy to clear up. How about I come to you? Where are you staying? Every instinct Mara had screamed not to give out the address. I need to call someone first. That's fine, but Ms. Lane, if you don't cooperate, I'll have to assume Mr. Lane's story has merit. That's not a road you want to go down. The detective hung up. Mara stood frozen in the kitchen, phone clutched in her hand, panic rising like floodwater. She called Luca. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? The words spilled out in a rush. The detective, Derek's lies, the threat of charges. Luca listened without interrupting, and when she finished, his voice was perfectly calm. Don't talk to anyone. Don't answer the door. I'm sending someone over right now. His name is Marcus Webb. He's a lawyer. Do exactly what he tells you. Luca, Derek said I kidnapped Ellie. Derek's a convicted felon on parole who violated the terms of his release by committing assault. His credibility is non-existent. My lawyers will handle this. Your lawyers can't just make the police go away. Mara. His voice cut through her spiral. Trust me, this is what I do. Marcus Webb arrived 20 minutes later, a silver-haired man in an impeccable suit who radiated the kind of confidence that cost $1,000 an hour. He settled in the living room with a leather portfolio and gave Mara a smile that probably put juries at ease. All right, he said, tell me everything. Mara did. Every detail from the past 4 days, going back to the night Derek had nearly killed her. Marcus took notes, asked clarifying questions, and showed no visible reaction to even the worst parts of her story. When she finished, he closed his portfolio. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to call Detective Chen and explain that you're represented by counsel and that all questions should go through me. I'll provide her with your medical records from the night of the assault, along with statements from Dr. Williams and the EMTs who treated you. I'll also provide Derek Lane's criminal history and parole violation documentation. Will that be enough? More than enough. Chen's trying to shake the tree, see what falls out. It's standard procedure when there are competing narratives, but your narrative has evidence. Derek's has nothing but lies and a history of violence. Marcus stood, smoothing his already smooth jacket. Don't worry, Ms. Lane. This will be resolved by end of day. He was right. By 6 that evening, Detective Chen had closed her investigation with a note that no charges would be filed against Mara Lane. Derek's complaint had been deemed without merit. Luca called an hour later. You okay? Yeah, your lawyer is terrifying. Marcus is the best, and expensive, which means he's worth every penny. A pause. This is going to happen again, you know. What do you mean? Derek's going to keep trying. He'll file complaints, make accusations, try to use the system against you. It's what abusers do when they lose control. Mara sank onto the couch, exhaustion settling into her bones. So what do I do? You let me handle it. Every time he makes a move, we shut it down. Eventually, he'll realize it's not working and he'll give up. You don't know Derek. He doesn't give up. Neither do I. Steel beneath the words. I promise you, Mara, he's not getting near you or Ellie again. After they hung up, Mara sat in the growing darkness and tried to figure out how her life had become something where she needed a criminal's protection from her ex-husband. The universe had a sick sense of humor. A week slipped by, then 2. Derek tried twice more, once claiming Mara had stolen from him, once trying to file for emergency custody of Ellie. Each time, Marcus Webb made the problem disappear with the efficiency of expensive litigation. Each time, Luca checked in to make sure Mara was holding up. She was. Mostly. The physical injuries healed faster than the mental ones. Her shoulder regained mobility. The bruises faded from purple to yellow to gone. The nightmares, though, those stuck around. She'd wake gasping in the dark, Derek's face looming over her, his fists coming down. And then she'd remember she was safe, 20 floors up, protected by cameras and doormen, and a man who made problems vanish with a phone call. It should have felt more secure than it did. Ellie adjusted with the resilience of childhood. She stopped asking when they were going home, started calling the penthouse our place, made friends with Rosa and charmed the doorman, and seemed to forget that 3 weeks ago her whole world had been falling apart. Mara envied her daughter's ability to move forward without looking back. On day 17, Luca arrived with groceries and found Mara pacing the living room like a caged animal. What's wrong? He asked, setting the bags on the counter. Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She ran her good hand through her hair, frustrated. I can't stay here forever. Nobody said forever. Then when? When does this end? He studied her for a long moment. When you're ready for it to end. When you've figured out what comes next. What if I don't know what comes next? Then you take time to figure it out. He started unpacking groceries, his movements efficient. There's no clock on this, Mara. No deadline. There's always a deadline. This is your apartment, your money, your protection. Eventually, you're going to want something in return. His hands stilled. What do you think I want? The question hung between them, loaded with implications Mara didn't want to examine. I don't know. That's what scares me. Luca turned to face her fully, leaning against the counter. You want to know what I want? Honestly? Please. I want to know that when I drive past that sidewalk where I found you, I don't have to wonder if you're okay. I want to know that your daughter gets to grow up without fear. I want to look in the mirror and not see the man who was too busy building an empire to notice someone he cared about was dying. His voice roughened. I want to do one good thing that doesn't come with blood on it. That's what I want. The raw honesty in his words hit harder than any lie could have. Mara felt something shift in her chest, some wall she'd built crumbling just a little. I'm not her, she said quietly. The woman you lost. I can't fix whatever happened there. I know. I'm not asking you to. He straightened. Look, I get that this whole situation is weird. You're living in my apartment, eating food I pay for, protected by people on my payroll. It's not normal. But normal wasn't working for you, was it? No, she admitted. It wasn't. So let me offer you something different. Stay here while you heal. And I don't just mean physically. Take time to figure out who you are when you're not just surviving. And when you're ready, we'll talk about what comes next. Your choice. Your terms. But no pressure, no demands, no price, except that you give yourself permission to breathe for 5 minutes. Mara wanted to argue, to insist she couldn't accept that kind of generosity. But the truth was, she was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being afraid, tired of making every decision from a place of desperation. Okay, she said softly. Okay? I'll stay. For now. While I figure things out. Something like relief crossed his face. Good. That's good. They finished unpacking groceries in companionable silence, and for the first time since Derek's fist had connected with her face, Mara felt something that might have been peace. It lasted exactly 3 days. On day 20, Mara's new phone rang with another unfamiliar number. This time when she answered, the voice on the other end was male, rough, and unfamiliar. Mara Lane? Who's this? Someone who knows where you're hiding. Nice building. Expensive neighborhood. Way above your pay grade. Ice flooded her veins. How did you get this number? I get lots of numbers, addresses too. Want me to tell you what your daughter was wearing when she played in the courtyard this morning? Pink dress with flowers. Very cute. Mara's hand tightened on the phone. If you touch her, relax. I'm not interested in the kid. I'm interested in having a conversation with Luca Moretti, and you're going to set it up. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Look, we can do this easy, or we can do this hard. Easy is you tell Moretti that Vincent Calabrese wants to meet. Hard is I keep calling, keep watching, keep making you nervous until you crack. What's it going to be? Mara's mind raced. I'll give him the message. Smart girl. Tell him I'll be in touch about when and where. And Mara, don't try to run. We're everywhere. The line went dead. Mara's hands shook as she called Luca. This time he didn't answer immediately. It went to voicemail. She left a message, trying to keep her voice steady, and then called again. And again. On the 4th try, he picked up. Mara, I'm in a meeting. Someone knows where we are. He threatened Ellie, said his name was Vincent Calabrese, and he wants to meet with you. Silence. Then, where are you right now? The apartment. Lock all the doors. Don't open them for anyone except me. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He made it in 8. The elevator doors opened and Luca strode out with 2 men Mara had never seen before. One built like a tank, the other lean and watchful. Both had that same controlled violence simmering beneath professional exteriors. Tell me exactly what he said, Luca demanded. Mara repeated the conversation word for word, watching his expression darken with each detail. He mentioned the courtyard? He described what Ellie was wearing this morning. Luca turned to the tank. Marco, sweep the building, every entrance, every camera. Find out how they're getting eyes on us. To the lean one, Tony, check for bugs. Phones, computers, everything. Both men moved immediately, no questions asked. Luca turned back to Mara, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something that might have been worry. Vincent Calabrese runs the East Side territories. He's been pushing into my areas for months, trying to start a war. His jaw worked. He found out about you, about Ellie, and now he's using you as leverage. The words landed like blows. This is my fault. If I hadn't... Don't. Sharp. Absolute. This is Vincent being Vincent. He'd have found some angle eventually. You just happened to be convenient. Convenient, Mara repeated bitterly. That's one way to put it. I'm going to fix this. How? By giving Vincent what he wants, a meeting, and then making it very clear that you and Ellie are off limits. And if he doesn't care about your limits? Luca's smile was cold enough to frost windows. Then I'll explain it in language he understands. Tony returned from his sweep, holding what looked like a small electronic device. Found this in the living room, behind the picture frame, professional grade. Mara stared at the bug in horror. They were listening to everything? For probably a week, Tony confirmed. Maybe more. Which meant Vincent Calabrese knew about Derek, about the assault, about every conversation Mara and Luca had shared in this apartment. He knew her vulnerabilities, her fears, her daughter's name. I can't stay here, Mara said, panic rising. If they can bug the apartment, plant cameras. You're not going anywhere. Luca's voice cut through her spiral. This building is about to become Fort Knox. No one gets in or out without going through security that would make the Secret Service jealous. He turned to Marco. Call in everyone. Full lockdown protocol. And get Marcus on the phone. We're going to need legal backup in case this goes sideways. On it! Marco pulled out his phone and stepped away. Luca moved closer to Mara, his voice dropping. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She wanted to say yes, wanted to believe that this man who'd pulled her off a sidewalk could protect her from whatever storm was coming, but trust had been beaten out of her a long time ago. I don't know, she whispered. Fair enough. He stepped back. Then trust this. I don't lose. Not fights, not territory, and definitely not people under my protection. Vincent Calabrese is about to learn that the hard way. Within 2 hours, the penthouse had transformed into something between a fortress and a command center. Men in dark suits appeared with equipment that looked like it belonged in spy movies, signal jammers, counter-surveillance tech, weapons that stayed holstered but were impossible to ignore. Mara watched them work with a growing sense of unreality, like she'd stumbled into someone else's life. Ellie, thankfully, thought it was all very exciting. She'd decided the security team were superheroes and kept trying to guess their powers. Marco played along, telling her his superpower was knowing when people were lying. Tony's was being invisible when he needed to be. The little girl ate it up, completely oblivious to the tension crackling through every adult in the room. Luca had taken over the dining table, phone pressed to his ear, conducting 3 conversations at once. Mara caught fragments, coordinates, time windows, legal contingencies. He moved through problems the way surgeons moved through operations, precise and emotionless. When he finally hung up, Marco was waiting with an update. Building's clean now, Marco reported. 6 cameras on the perimeter, 2 on the service entrance. Vincent's people were thorough. We've got countermeasures in place. They're blind now. Good. Luca's eyes found Mara across the room. Can you take Ellie into her bedroom? We need to talk. The careful neutrality in his voice sent warning bells through her system. Mara nodded and collected her daughter, who protested leaving the superheroes but went willingly when promised extra bedtime stories. When she returned, Luca was alone. The security team had melted away to whatever positions they'd taken up around the building. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the couch. Mara sat. "What did you find out?" "Vincent wants to meet tomorrow night. Neutral territory, limited security on both sides. He says he just wants to talk." "You don't believe him." "Vincent Calabrese doesn't do anything without an angle, but refusing to meet would be worse. It'd look like weakness, and in my world, weakness gets you killed." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "There's something else. Something you need to know about Derek." Ice crystallized in Mara's stomach. "What about him?" "He didn't just beat you because he's a drunk with anger issues. He beat you because he's in debt. Deep debt. The kind that gets people disappeared." "I don't understand." Luca pulled out his phone, swiped to a photo, held it out. The image showed Derek sitting across a table from two men Mara didn't recognize. The photo was grainy, obviously taken from a distance, but Derek's face was clear enough. "These are Vincent's people," Luca said quietly. "This photo was taken 3 weeks before I found you. Your ex-husband owes Vincent Calabrese $47,000 from a poker game that went very badly." The number hit like a physical blow. 47,000. They'd never had $47,000. They'd never had $4,000. "That's impossible. Derek doesn't have that kind of money." "No, he doesn't." So he offered Vincent something else as collateral. The apartment went very quiet. Mara could hear her own heartbeat, loud and frantic. "You," Luca said, "and Ellie." The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. "What?" "He told Vincent he had a wife and kid. Said Vincent could have you both if he'd forgive the debt. Vincent was considering it. You'd be worth more than 47,000 on certain markets, but then you left Derek. And when I found you and brought you into my protection, you became untouchable." He paused. "Until Vincent figured out the connection." Mara's hands were shaking. She pressed them together, trying to still the tremors. "You're telling me Derek was going to sell us? Like property?" "Yes." "To pay a gambling debt?" "Yes." The rage came from somewhere deep and primal, burning away the shock. "That son of a bitch! That absolute—" She couldn't even finish the sentence. There weren't words vile enough. "I know," Luca said, and something in his voice suggested he really did know, that he'd seen this particular brand of human garbage before. "Does Vincent still want—" Mara couldn't say it. "No, you're under my protection. That makes you untouchable. But it also makes you leverage." His expression hardened. "Vincent's not stupid. He knows I won't just hand you over, but he also knows that threatening you gets my attention, which is what this whole thing has been about, forcing me to the table. So I'm bait." "Your motivation." He stood, pacing to the window. "Vincent's been pushing into my territories for months. Every week it's a new provocation. His people dealing on my corners, his crews shaking down my establishments. He wants a reaction, wants me to start a war so he can claim self-defense to the other families. And meeting with him, that's giving him what he wants. Meeting with him is calling his bluff. If he just wanted to talk territory, he'd have gone through the usual channels. But he involved you, which means this is personal. He's trying to prove I'm weak, that I let emotions dictate business decisions." Mara processed that. "So what happens at this meeting?" "I negotiate, figure out what he really wants, and make it very clear that you and Ellie are completely off the table." "And if he doesn't accept that?" Luca turned from the window, and the look in his eyes was the coldest thing Mara had ever seen. "Then we have a different kind of conversation." Sleep didn't come easily that night. Mara lay in the expensive bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind churning through everything she'd learned. Derek had tried to sell them, had looked at his wife and daughter and seen merchandise, commodities to trade away. The man she'd married, the man she'd loved once upon a time before the drinking and the anger consumed him, that man had been willing to hand them over to criminals like they were nothing. The betrayal cut deeper than his fists ever had. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and padded into the living room. She wasn't expecting to find Luca there, sitting in the dark with a glass of whiskey, staring out at the city lights. "Can't sleep either?" he asked without turning around. "Keep thinking about Derek, about what he tried to do." "That's normal. Betrayal takes time to process." Mara curled up in the chair across from him. "How did you find out? About the debt? The arrangement with Vincent?" "I have people everywhere. Eyes, ears, informants. When Vincent started making noise about you, I had them dig deeper. The poker game came up, the debt, the offer Derek made." He took a sip of whiskey. "I've been in this business 20 years. You'd think nothing would surprise me anymore. But the casual way some people discard the people who trust them, that still gets me." "Is that what happened to her? The woman you lost?" His hand tightened on the glass. For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Her name was Elena. My sister." Mara's breath caught. "Luca? She got involved with someone in a rival organization, thought it was love. Turned out he was using her to get information about my operations. When I found out, I told her to end it. She said I was being paranoid." His voice went flat, emotionless. 3 weeks later, her body turned up in the East River. He'd gotten what he needed and disposed of the evidence. "I'm so sorry. I was building this empire, making myself untouchable, accumulating power and money and respect. And I missed the fact that my own sister was being played by a man who saw her as nothing but a tool. By the time I paid attention, it was too late." He drained the whiskey. "So when I found you bleeding on that sidewalk, when I saw what Derek had done, I saw another chance. A chance to not be too late." The pieces clicked into place. "That's why you've done all this. Not charity, penance." "Maybe. Or maybe I just got tired of watching people get destroyed by the men who are supposed to protect them." He set down the glass. "Does it matter why?" "I don't know. Probably not." They sat in the darkness for a while, two people carrying different griefs in the same direction. "This meeting tomorrow," Mara said finally. "You're walking into danger because of me." "I'm walking into a negotiation because Vincent forced my hand. You're just the excuse he used." "Still feels like my fault." "It's not. But I understand why it feels that way." He stood. "You should try to get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be complicated." Mara watched him head toward the elevator, then called out, "Luca?" He paused, hand on the button. "Thank you for telling me about Elena. She would have liked you," he said quietly. "You've got the same fire she did, the same refusal to stay down." The elevator opened. "Get some rest, Mara." After he left, Mara returned to bed, and this time sleep came. But her dreams were full of dark water and men's faces and Ellie's voice calling for her from somewhere she couldn't reach. The next day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Rosa arrived with breakfast but seemed subdued, the usual chatter replaced by tense efficiency. The security team stayed visible, a constant reminder that normalcy was suspended until further notice. Ellie sensed something was wrong and grew clingy, following Mara from room to room like a shadow. Luca appeared around noon, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than a used car. He looked every inch the powerful man he was. Dangerous, controlled, absolutely confident. But Mara had seen him in the small hours, vulnerable and grieving, and she couldn't unsee it now. "Marco's going to stay here with you tonight," he said, checking his watch. "The meeting's at 9. I should be back by 11, midnight at the latest. And if you're not, then Marcus Webb will contact you with instructions, but it won't come to that." "You sound very sure." "I'm very good at what I do." He started to leave, then turned back. "Mara, if something does go wrong, if you don't hear from me by 1 in the morning, There's an envelope in the top drawer of the desk in the study. Everything you need is in there. Identification, bank accounts, instructions for disappearing. Take Ellie and go. Don't wait. Don't look back. Fear wrapped cold fingers around her heart. Luca? It's just insurance. Probably won't need it. But better to have the plan than not. I don't want your contingency plans. I want you to come back. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or something warmer. I will, he said. Promise. Then he was gone, and Mara was left with Marco and her daughter and a clock that seemed determined to move as slowly as possible. 9 o'clock came and went. So did 10. Mara tried to focus on a book but couldn't track the words. Tried to watch television, but everything felt frivolous. Marco sat near the elevator, face impassive, phone in hand, waiting. At 10:45, his phone buzzed. He read the message, his expression unchanging. They're wrapping up. Boss says he'll be here within the hour. Relief flooded through her. It went well? Message doesn't say, just that it's ending. The hour that followed felt longer than the previous 5 combined. Mara paced, sat, stood, paced again. Marco watched her with the patience of someone who'd done this many times before. At 11:37, the elevator chimed. Luca stepped out, and Mara's relief lasted exactly as long as it took to see his face. He was furious, the kind of cold, controlled fury that was more frightening than shouting. Blood stained his knuckles, his jacket was missing. And behind him came Tony, supporting a man Mara had never seen before, someone who was conscious but barely, his face a mess of bruises and blood. Get Ellie in her room, Luca said. Now! Mara didn't argue. She scooped up her daughter, who'd fallen asleep on the couch, and carried her to the bedroom. When she returned, the injured man was sitting at the dining table while Tony worked on his face with a first aid kit. Luca stood at the window, still radiating that terrible anger. What happened? Mara asked. Vincent happened. Luca's voice was ice. The meeting was a setup. He never intended to negotiate. He wanted me vulnerable, away from my territory with minimal security. And he brought Derek. The name hit like a slap. What? Derek was there. Vincent had him brought from Rikers. Don't ask me how. He's got people everywhere, including the correctional system. Luca turned, and his eyes were black with rage. Vincent's offer was simple. He'd forgive Derek's debt if Derek could identify something valuable about you, something Vincent could use. Mara's blood turned to ice. What did Derek tell him? Nothing useful, as it turns out. Derek doesn't know anything about you except that you're stubborn and hard to break. But he tried, sat there and tried to sell you out a second time. His hands clenched. So I made sure he understood that was a mistake. The blood on your knuckles is Derek's, yes, and it'll be the last time he makes the mistake of speaking your name in my presence. The injured man at the table coughed, drawing attention. Luca crossed to him in 3 strides. This is Anthony Russo, Luca said, one of Vincent's lieutenants. He's going to tell us everything about Vincent's operation. Aren't you, Anthony? The man nodded weakly. When he spoke, his voice was thick with pain and missing teeth. Vincent's planning something bigger. The thing with Derek, with your girl, that was just the opening move. He's got support from the commission. They think you're getting too powerful, too independent. They want you brought to heel. The commission approved a hit on me? Not exactly. They approved Vincent taking action to stabilize his territory. How he does that is up to him and Vincent's chosen war. Luca's expression went absolutely glacial. When? Soon. Days, maybe a week. He's gathering allies, calling in favors, planning to hit all your operations at once, overwhelm your defenses. How many soldiers? 150, maybe 200. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Mara didn't know much about organized crime, but even she understood that 200 attackers was an army. What does he want? Luca asked. Territory? Money? Or does he just want me dead? All of it. Your territory, your operations, your life. He wants to absorb everything you've built and present it to the commission as proof he's the future. Anthony coughed again, blood speckling his lips. I'm telling you this because Vincent killed my brother last week. Blamed it on your people to justify escalation. My brother wasn't even involved in the life. He was a teacher, for Christ's sake. But Vincent needed a martyr, so he made one. The raw grief in the man's voice was familiar. Mara had heard that same note in Luca's voice when he talked about Elena. Where's Derek now? Mara asked, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Luca glanced at her. Back at Rikers, I made some calls. He won't be getting any more special field trips, and his stay just got extended. Turns out there was evidence of him attempting to bribe a corrections officer. He's looking at another 5 years minimum. You framed him. I ensured justice was served. There's a difference. He turned back to Anthony. You're going to tell me everything. Every safe house, every weapons cache, every route Vincent's people use, and then you're going to disappear somewhere Vincent will never find you. I'm a dead man either way. Maybe, but helping me gives you a chance. Staying loyal to Vincent guarantees you end up in the river. Luca's voice softened fractionally. I can protect you, Anthony, but only if you give me everything. The man nodded. Okay. I'll tell you everything. For the next 2 hours, Mara listened as Anthony Russo systematically dismantled Vincent Calabresi's operation from the inside. Locations, names, schedules, weak points, it poured out in a torrent of information that Marco recorded on his phone. Luca asked precise questions that suggested he already knew half of what Anthony was revealing and was simply confirming details. When it was finally done, Tony helped Anthony to a back bedroom. Luca, Marco, and Mara were left in the living room surrounded by the wreckage of the evening. So what now? Mara asked. Now I go to war. Luca's voice was matter-of-fact. Vincent wants to absorb my operation. I'm going to dismantle his first. Hit his income streams, turn his allies, make it clear to the commission that backing him was a catastrophic miscalculation. That sounds dangerous. It is. Which is why you and Ellie are leaving the city. What? No, I'm not running. This isn't running. It's being smart. Vincent knows where you are, knows you matter to me. That makes you a target. I can't protect you and fight a war at the same time. So you're just shipping us off somewhere? I'm ensuring you survive what's coming. He pulled out his phone, pulled up a photo. There's a house upstate, 3 hours from the city, middle of nowhere, completely off the grid. You'll have security, everything you need. You stay there until this is finished. Mara stared at the photo. A beautiful craftsman-style house surrounded by trees, isolated and peaceful. It looked like something from a magazine. It looked like a cage. How long? She asked. However long it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. He met her eyes. I will end this, Mara. I will make sure Vincent never threatens you again, but I need you safe while I do it. Please. The please broke through her resistance. She'd never heard him ask for anything, never heard that note of vulnerability in his voice. Okay, she said finally. We'll go. But Luca, you come back. You don't get to save us and then die in some pointless gang war. Ellie's already lost one father figure. She doesn't need to lose another. I'm not her father. No. But you're the first man who's ever protected her instead of hurting her. That matters. You matter. The words surprised her even as she said them, but they were true. Somewhere in the chaos of the past 3 weeks, Luca Moretti had become important. So you come back. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'll come back. They left before dawn. Mara and Ellie bundled into an SUV with tinted windows while the city still slept. Marco drove, with Tony in the passenger seat. 2 more cars followed, security that Luca wasn't taking chances with. Ellie thought it was an adventure. Mara knew better. The house was exactly as beautiful as the photo suggested. all warm wood and big windows and space to breathe. The security was invisible but present. Cameras, motion sensors, armed men who kept their distance but were always there. It was a gilded cage, comfortable and safe, and utterly isolating. The first 3 days were the hardest. No news from the city, no word from Luca. Just Marco's assurances that everything was proceeding according to plan, and Mara's growing certainty that something had gone terribly wrong. On day 4, her new phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Mara Lane. The voice was cultured, older, unfamiliar. Who is this? My name is Arthur Galante. I'm a mediator for the commission. I'm calling to inform you that the situation between Mr. Moretti and Mr. Calabrese has been resolved. Her heart stopped. Resolved how? Mr. Calabrese is no longer a factor in territorial negotiations. His operations have been absorbed by other families, and your name, along with your daughter's, has been placed on a list of untouchable parties. No member of any affiliated organization will approach, threaten, or harm either of you under penalty of excommunication. It took a moment for the words to penetrate. Vincent's dead? Mr. Calabrese is no longer a factor, Arthur repeated, which was probably the closest to confirmation she'd get. Mr. Moretti asked me to convey that you're safe now, completely and permanently safe. He'll be in touch soon to discuss next steps. Is he okay? Is Luca okay? Mr. Moretti is fine. Tired but uninjured. He's currently engaged in transition meetings but should be free within the day. A pause. He also asked me to tell you that he keeps his promises. The call ended. Mara stood in the beautiful house holding her expensive phone and let herself breathe for what felt like the first time in days. Luca had done it, had somehow dismantled Vincent's operation, survived whatever violence had been necessary, and ensured that she and Ellie would never be targets again. He'd kept his promise. That evening, Marco confirmed the news. Vincent Calabrese's body had been found in his office, apparent suicide. His lieutenants had scattered or been absorbed by other families. The threat was over. When can we go back to the city? Mara asked. Whenever you want, but the boss suggested you might want to stay here a few more days. Let the dust settle completely. I want to see him. I want to make sure he's really okay. Marco smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. He said you'd say that. He's coming here tomorrow morning. Wanted to tell you himself that it's over. Mara woke before sunrise, unable to sleep through the anticipation. She'd spent half the night rehearsing what she'd say to Luca. Thank you seemed inadequate, and anything more felt too revealing of feelings she wasn't ready to examine. In the end, she decided to let the moment dictate the words. Ellie was still asleep, sprawled across her bed in the guest room with Mr. Hops. Two clutched tight. Mara watched her daughter breathe, steady and peaceful, and felt something loosen in her chest. For the first time in 5 years, Ellie was truly safe. Not temporarily protected, not hiding, not one bad day away from disaster. Safe. The word felt foreign and precious. She made coffee in the enormous kitchen, watching dawn break over the trees through windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. The house was beautiful in the morning light, all warm wood and soft colors, the kind of place she'd never imagined living. Marco appeared right at 7, looking more rested than he had in days. Boss called, he said, accepting the coffee she offered. He'll be here by 9, bringing breakfast. Of course he is. Mara couldn't help smiling. Luca Moretti, crime lord and protector, who expressed care through expensive meals and elaborate gestures because direct emotion seemed to make him uncomfortable. He also said to tell you that he wants to have a serious conversation. About what comes next? The smile faded. Did he say what kind of conversation? No, but he sounded different, lighter maybe, like something heavy had been lifted. Marco studied her over his coffee cup. For what it's worth, I've worked for Luca Moretti for 8 years. I've seen him handle wars, betrayals, impossible situations. Never seen him care about someone the way he cares about you and your daughter. He barely knows us. Doesn't seem to matter. You got under his skin somehow. Made him remember there's more to life than territory and power. Marco set down his cup. Just thought you should know that before you two talk. He left her alone with that observation and a growing sense of uncertainty about what the day would bring. Luca arrived at exactly 9 o'clock, emerging from a black SUV with bakery bags and the kind of exhaustion that came from too many days running on adrenaline. He looked thinner than she remembered, shadows under his eyes, but when he saw her standing on the porch, his face transformed into something almost like relief. "You're really okay," she said, meeting him halfway across the driveway. "I'm really okay." He set down the bags, and before either of them could think better of it, she was hugging him, carefully, mindful of her still healing shoulder, but firmly enough to confirm he was solid and real and alive. Luca went very still for a heartbeat, then his arms came around her gentle and sure. "I promised I'd come back," he murmured into her hair. "I know, but promises and reality don't always match up. They do when I make them." They stood there for a moment longer than strictly necessary, and when they finally pulled apart, something had shifted between them. Some wall had come down, leaving honest concern and genuine connection in its place. Inside, they spread breakfast across the dining table, pastries from that bakery with the 6-month wait list, fresh fruit, expensive coffee. Ellie appeared like a small tornado, delighted to see Luca and completely uninterested in the undercurrents of adult emotion. "Did you fight the bad guys?" she asked around a mouthful of croissant. "I did," Luca confirmed. "Did you win?" "Yes." "Good." Ellie nodded with the serious satisfaction of a child whose world made sense again. "Can we stay in this house? I like the big windows." Luca's eyes found Mara's. "That depends on your mom. We need to talk about what happens now." After breakfast, Marco took Ellie outside to explore the property, leaving Mara and Luca alone at the table. He poured more coffee for both of them, his movements careful and deliberate, like he was buying time to find the right words. "Vincent's dead," he said finally, "along with most of his inner circle. The ones who survived are either in custody or have left the state entirely. His organization is gone. Arthur Galante called. He said I was on some kind of protected list now. The Untouchable Registry. It's a commission guarantee that no affiliated organization will harm you. Breaking it means excommunication, which in our world is essentially a death sentence." He met her eyes. "You're safe, Mara. Completely, permanently safe. Vincent can't hurt you. Derek can't hurt you. No one can." The words should have brought relief. Instead, they brought questions. "What did it cost you, getting me on that list? Does it matter?" "Yes." He was quiet for a moment, fingers drumming against his coffee cup. "I gave up territory, 3 blocks in Red Hook that Vincent had been trying to take for years. Told the commission they could distribute it among the other families as a gesture of goodwill, proof that I wasn't trying to build an empire that threatened everyone else. 3 blocks. That's a lot? In our world? Yes. Millions in annual revenue, strategic positioning, symbolic value." He shrugged. "But it's just territory. You're a person. Easy choice." Mara processed that. He'd sacrificed significant power and money to ensure her safety, not as a loan or a favor to be repaid, but as a choice freely made. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That's not adequate, but thank you." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You've given me my life back, given Ellie a future without fear. That deserves acknowledgement. What it deserves is honesty." Luca set down his cup and leaned forward, all pretense of casual conversation abandoned. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. Can you do that?" Wariness crept through her. "Okay." When I found you on that sidewalk, I told myself it was about Elena, about not being too late this time, about redemption or penance or whatever story let me sleep at night. And maybe that was true at first, but somewhere between the hospital and the penthouse and watching you put your daughter to bed every night, somewhere in there, it stopped being about my dead sister and started being about you. Mara's breath caught. Luca, let me finish, please. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration or nervousness she'd never seen from him. I'm not good at this, at feelings, at vulnerability, at any of it. I've spent 20 years building walls and eliminating weaknesses. But you walked into my life bleeding and terrified, and you've systematically demolished every defense I had. And I don't know what to do with that. What are you saying? I'm saying that I care about you. More than is probably wise, more than is definitely professional. I'm saying that when Vincent threatened you, the fury I felt had nothing to do with business and everything to do with the fact that he was threatening someone who'd become important to me. His dark eyes held hers. I'm saying that I want you to stay. Not in the penthouse, not as someone under my protection, but as someone who chooses to be part of my life because she wants to be. The confession hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Mara's mind raced through 1,000 responses, 1,000 objections. He was a criminal. She barely knew him. This was too fast, too intense, too complicated. Every rational part of her brain screamed warnings. But her heart, that traitorous organ that had been broken and rebuilt too many times, whispered something different. It whispered that Luca Moretti had seen her at her absolute worst and hadn't flinched, had given her safety and space and the kind of protection that asked for nothing in return, had proven over and over that his word was gold and his promises were sacred. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Then don't say anything yet. Just listen. He stood, pacing to the windows that overlooked the forest. I'm not asking you to decide today. I'm not asking you to decide this week. But I'm asking you to consider a future where you're not alone, where someone has your back, always. Where Ellie grows up knowing what it looks like when someone keeps their promises. What would that future look like? Practically, I mean. He turned from the window. Whatever you want it to look like. You want to stay in New York? We find you an apartment, a real one, not borrowed space. You want to leave the city entirely? We make that happen. You want to go back to school, finish your degree? I'll make sure money isn't an obstacle. You want to work? Don't work. Start a business? Whatever. I'll support it. That's not a partnership. That's you taking care of me. No. A partnership is both people contributing what they can. Right now, you're healing from years of abuse. You're rebuilding from nothing. So right now, what you contribute is letting me help. Later, when you're steady on your feet, we'll figure out what equal looks like. And what do you get out of this arrangement? The question seemed to catch him off guard. What do I get? Yes, you're offering me everything. Safety, security, financial support, a future. What's in it for you? You, he said simply. I get to know that when I wake up at 3 a.m. because I can't sleep. I can call you and you'll answer. I get to watch Ellie grow up happy instead of scared. I get to be part of something that isn't about power or territory or winning. I get to be just Luca instead of Luca Moretti, the man everyone either fears or wants something from. The vulnerability in his voice undid something in Mara's chest. This powerful man, this criminal king who commanded loyalty and inspired terror, just wanted to be known, wanted to be seen as more than his reputation. I can't promise you anything, she said carefully. I'm not ready for a relationship. Might not be ready for a long time. Derek destroyed something in me, and I don't know if it can be fixed. I'm not asking for a relationship, not in the traditional sense. I'm asking for a chance. Time to prove that not all men are like Derek. Space for you to heal without having to worry about survival. And if, eventually, you decide you want more, if you decide I'm worth the risk, then we'll figure it out together. And if I decide I don't want more? If I heal and realize that what I need is independence, not another person in my life? Pain flickered across his face, quickly hidden. Then I'll help you build that independence, and I'll step back. Your choice, always your choice. But Mara, I hope you choose to let me stay. She studied him in the morning light, this complicated man who'd saved her life, and asked for nothing except the chance to be part of it. Everything logical said this was too fast, too intense, that she should take his money and run as far as possible. But logic had never kept her warm at night. Logic had never made Ellie laugh or feel safe. I need conditions, she said finally. Hope sparked in his eyes. Name them. First, Ellie comes before everything. Any decision I make, any choice about the future, she's the priority. Always. Agreed. I wouldn't respect you if she wasn't. Second, I need independence. Real independence. Not just the illusion of choice, while you control everything behind the scenes. If I'm going to rebuild my life, it has to be mine. I need to know I can stand on my own 2 feet. Also agreed, though I reserve the right to offer help when you need it. Third, this was the hard one. I need honesty, complete honesty. No more surprises about your business, your connections, the danger you operate in. If I'm going to make informed choices, I need all the information. Luca was quiet for a long moment. That's the one I can't fully promise. There are things in my world that are dangerous just to know. Information that could get you killed if the wrong people found out you had it. I can promise transparency about anything that affects you directly, but some secrets I have to keep for your own protection. How do I know the difference? You trust me to make that call, or you don't, and we end this conversation right now. It was a test, Mara realized. Not a manipulation, but a genuine boundary. Luca operated in a world with rules she didn't understand, and he was asking her to trust his judgment about what she could safely know. It was a reasonable request. It was also terrifying. Okay, she said slowly. Conditional honesty. But if I ask a direct question and you can answer it safely, you do. No deflection, no pretty lies. Deal. He moved back to the table, sitting across from her again. Anything else? Yes, if this doesn't work, if I decide I can't do this, can't be part of your world, you let me go. Cleanly. No guilt trips, no making it difficult, no using your resources to keep tabs on me. You let me and Ellie disappear if that's what we need. The request clearly hurt him, but he nodded. If you want to leave, I'll help you leave. You have my word. Mara took a deep breath, feeling like she was standing on the edge of a cliff about to jump. Then, okay, I'll stay. I'll give this, whatever this is, a chance. But Luca, I need you to understand something. I'm broken in ways I don't even fully recognize yet. I have trust issues and trauma, and a daughter who needs stability more than I need romance. So if you're expecting some kind of fairy tale, you're going to be disappointed. I don't want a fairy tale, he said quietly. I want reality. Messy, complicated, difficult reality with someone who sees me as more than just the power I wield. That's all I'm asking for. Then we'll try. No promises about where it leads, but we'll try. The smile that crossed his face was like sunrise, transforming his usually controlled features into something open and genuinely happy. That's enough. More than enough. They talked for hours after that, working through practical details. Mara would stay in the upstate house for another week, letting Ellie adjust to the idea that this was permanent, not temporary. Then they'd return to the city. Not to the penthouse, which had too many bad memories, but to a townhouse in Brooklyn that Luca owned and had been using for storage. It needed work, needed to be transformed into a home, but that was good. Mara could be part of making it livable, could put her stamp on it. Money was discussed with surprising frankness. Luca had set up an account in her name with enough to cover expenses for the next year. After that, they'd revisit based on what she'd decided to do with her life. He also insisted on setting up a trust for Ellie, something that would ensure her education and future regardless of what happened between the adults. I don't want your money, Mara protested. It's not about what you want. It's about what Ellie deserves. She deserves to know that college is guaranteed, that medical care is never a question, that she'll never have to make choices based on scarcity. Let me give her that. When he put it that way, refusal felt selfish. So Mara agreed with the caveat that she'd be looking for work as soon as she was ready, that she wouldn't be financially dependent forever. Derek came up once, briefly. He'd been transferred to a maximum security facility upstate and would be there for at least 6 years, possibly longer if certain evidence about his cooperation with Vincent came to light. Marcus Webb was handling everything, ensuring that Derek's parental rights were legally terminated on grounds of attempted trafficking. He would never have a claim on Ellie again. How did you get evidence of trafficking? Mara asked. Vincent's dead. Derek's not going to confess. Anthony Russo is testifying. In exchange for witness protection, he's providing detailed testimony about Vincent's operations, including Derek's offer to trade you and Ellie for debt forgiveness. It's enough to bury Derek legally. And Anthony's safe? Vincent's people won't come after him? Anthony's already gone. New identity, new city, new life. The commission guaranteed his safety in exchange for his cooperation in cleaning up Vincent's mess. Luca's expression darkened. What Derek tried to do, selling his own family, that's beyond the pale even in my world. There are rules, lines we don't cross. He crossed them all. The conversation eventually wound down, and Luca stood to leave. I should get back to the city. There are transition meetings, territory negotiations, the usual aftermath of a war. But I'll call tonight, check in. And I'll be back this weekend to help you and Ellie move to the townhouse. You don't have to help us move. I know. I want to. At the door, he paused. Mara, thank you for giving this a chance. I know it's not easy, trusting someone after what you've been through, but I promise I'll do everything in my power to prove you made the right choice. Just keep being honest with me. That's all I need. I can do that. He started to leave, then turned back one more time. One more thing. My mother wants to meet you. Mara blinked. Your mother? She's a force of nature, runs half the family businesses, terrifies grown men, makes the best lasagna in 5 boroughs. And when I told her about you and Ellie, she insisted on Sunday dinner. Fair warning, she's going to interrogate you, probably embarrass me, and definitely try to feed you until you can't move. That sounds... Mara wasn't sure how to finish that sentence. Terrifying? Normal? Like something from a life she'd never imagined having? Overwhelming, Lucas applied. It's overwhelming, but she means well. And she's been nagging me for years to settle down, so you're basically a miracle from her perspective. No pressure, then. He laughed, and the sound was so unexpected and genuine that it made Mara smile despite her nervousness. You'll be fine. Just be yourself. That's more than enough. After he left, Mara stood on the porch, watching his SUV disappear down the long driveway. Marco appeared beside her, arms crossed, looking amused. Well? He asked. Well, what? You going to give him a real shot, or are you still planning to bolt the first chance you get? I don't know. Ask me again in 6 months. Fair enough. Marco headed back inside. For what it's worth, I think you're good for him. He's been alone a long time. Too long. Maybe you're the one who finally gets him to remember he's human. The next week passed in a strange bubble of domesticity. Mara and Ellie explored the property, ventured into the small town nearby for supplies, and settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Luca called every night, conversations that started as check-ins and evolved into something more personal. Discussions about books they'd read, movies they'd seen, the small details of daily life that built connection. He told her about his mother's reaction when he'd mentioned bringing someone to dinner, told her about the territory negotiations that were surprisingly smooth now that Vincent was gone, Told her about the nightmares he still had sometimes, dreams where Elena was calling for help and he couldn't reach her. Mara, in turn, found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone. The way Derek's voice still sometimes echoed in her head, telling her she was worthless. The guilt she felt about staying with him as long as she had, exposing Ellie to that environment. The fear that she'd never be able to trust her own judgment about people again. "You're trusting me," Luca pointed out during one of these late-night conversations. "That's a start. I'm trying to trust you. There's a difference." "Fair enough. But Mara, the fact that you're trying, after everything, that takes more courage than most people have. Don't discount that." On Saturday, Luca arrived with a moving truck and enough manpower to relocate a small army. The townhouse in Brooklyn was beautiful in a different way than the upstate house. Lived in, warm, with enough space for Ellie to have her own room and Mara to have an office if she wanted one. It needed paint and repairs and all sorts of updates, but the bones were solid. "I know it's not perfect," Luca said as they stood in the empty living room, "but I thought maybe making it perfect could be a project, something you could put your own stamp on." Mara walked through the rooms, imagining what they could become, a real home, a place that was theirs, not borrowed or temporary. "It's perfect," she said, "or it will be." Ellie loved it immediately, claiming the room with the big window that overlooked a small garden. She was already planning where her toys would go, which wall needed her drawings, how Mr. Hops 2 should have a special shelf all his own. They spent the weekend unpacking, painting Ellie's room a soft yellow she'd chosen herself, and starting to turn the townhouse into something that felt like home. Rosa appeared with food. Marcus stopped by with paperwork about the deed. Luca had put the house in Mara's name, a gesture that had made her cry when she realized what it meant. She owned this place, really owned it. No landlord, no lease, no threat of eviction. Sunday dinner at Luca's mother's house was exactly as overwhelming as promised. Maria Moretti was a tiny woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She welcomed Mara and Ellie with enthusiastic hugs, immediately swept Ellie off to the kitchen to help with dessert, and then subjected Mara to the kind of gentle but thorough interrogation that probably made mobsters confess their sins. "So," Maria said, passing Mara a glass of wine, "my son tells me you're special. He's being generous. He's being honest, which from Luca is practically a declaration of love." Maria's eyes twinkled. "That boy has been married to his business for 20 years. I'd given up hope of grandchildren. And then you appear, complete with a beautiful little girl who my son apparently adores. You can imagine my delight." "Mrs. Moretti, Maria, please, and before you tell me it's complicated or you're taking things slow or whatever sensible thing you're about to say, let me tell you something about my son." She settled into the chair across from Mara, wine glass in hand. When Luca was 8 years old, his father was killed, shot in the street like a dog by men who thought they could take what was ours. Luca watched it happen, and from that moment on, he decided that feeling anything was a weakness. He built walls so high and thick that even I couldn't always reach him. Mara's heart ached for the child Luca had been, for the trauma that had shaped him. "But you," Maria continued, "you got through those walls. I can hear it in his voice when he talks about you, see it in his eyes when he mentions your daughter. You reminded him that being human isn't weakness, it's strength. So whatever happens between you two, whatever you decide, thank you for that gift." "I haven't decided anything yet," Mara admitted. "I'm still figuring out how to trust again." "Then take your time. Luca's not going anywhere. And Mara, trust isn't something you decide to do. It's something you build piece by piece through actions and time. Give him the chance to build it, that's all." Dinner was loud and chaotic and wonderful. Multiple courses, stories about Luca's childhood that made him groan with embarrassment, Ellie laughing at jokes she only half understood. It felt like family. Real, messy, complicated family. Driving home that night, Ellie asleep in the back seat, Mara found herself thinking about Maria's words. Trust built through actions and time. Luca had been building that trust from the moment he'd found her on the sidewalk. Through honesty, through protection, through keeping every promise he'd made. Maybe it was time for Mara to start building too. The Monday after dinner with Maria Moretti, Mara walked into the community college enrollment office with her GED transcripts and a clarity she hadn't felt in years. The admissions counselor was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who didn't ask about the gap in Mara's education or why she was starting over at 28. Social work, the counselor said, reading Mara's intended major. That's a challenging field. Rewarding, but challenging. I spent 5 years living in hell, Mara replied. I figure I can help other people find their way out. She enrolled in 3 classes for the spring semester, scheduled around Ellie's school hours. When she told Luca that evening, his pride was obvious even through the phone. That's perfect, he said. You're going to be incredible at it. I haven't even started yet. Doesn't matter. I've seen how you handle impossible situations. You're exactly the kind of person who should be doing that work. He paused. I'm proud of you. For choosing something that matters, something that's yours. The word settled warm in her chest. Thank you for making it possible. You made it possible. I just removed some obstacles. Over the next few months, a rhythm established itself that felt almost normal. Mara attended classes in the morning while Ellie was at the private school Luca had insisted on. Another gift Mara had stopped fighting because the school was exceptional and Ellie was thriving. Afternoons were for homework, both hers and Ellie's, for making the townhouse feel more like home, for slowly rebuilding a life that felt authentic. Luca appeared regularly, but not oppressively. Sunday dinners at Maria's became tradition. Wednesday evenings he'd bring takeout and help Ellie with her reading homework while Mara studied. Saturdays were flexible. Sometimes he had business. Sometimes they'd all go to the park or a museum or just stay in and watch movies. He never pushed for more than Mara was ready to give. Never made demands or expectations. Just showed up, consistently and reliably, proving through action that his promises had weight. The nightmares came less frequently. Some weeks Mara slept through the night entirely, and when she did wake gasping and afraid, she'd learned to call Luca instead of suffering alone. He always answered, always talked her down from the panic, always reminded her that Derek was locked away and Vincent was gone and she was safe. You don't have to keep doing this, she told him one night after a particularly bad dream had her calling at 2 a.m, answering every time I fall apart. I want to, he said simply. Besides, you think you're the only one with nightmares? We're taking turns keeping each other sane. It was true. Luca had his own demons, his own 3 a.m. phone calls where he needed to hear a friendly voice. They were building something reciprocal, something that wasn't about him saving her, but about 2 broken people helping each other heal. 3 months into the new routine, Marcus Webb appeared at the townhouse with paperwork that made Mara's hands shake. Derek's parental rights have been officially terminated, Marcus said, his tone professionally neutral, but his eyes sympathetic. He can't petition for custody, can't demand visitation, can't make any legal claim on Ellie. As far as the law is concerned, he's not her father anymore. Mara had known it was coming, had signed all the necessary forms, but actually holding the court order felt surreal. What did Derek say? When they told him? According to the prison report, he didn't say much. Signed the papers without argument. I think he understands that fighting would only make things worse for him. Marcus hesitated. There's something else. Derek's lawyer reached out. Derek wants to write you a letter. Oh, every muscle in Mara's body tensed. Absolutely not. That's what I told them, but they're persistent. Said Derek wants to apologize, wants closure. He can want whatever he likes. I don't owe him closure. No, you don't. But Mara, speaking as your lawyer, if he writes anyway, If it somehow gets to you through unofficial channels, you should know that engaging with it in any way could complicate things legally. Don't respond, don't acknowledge, don't give him any opening. I won't. That part of my life is over. Marcus left and Mara immediately called Luca, needing to hear his voice, needing the reminder that she wasn't alone in this. He can't hurt you anymore, Luca said when she'd explained about Derek's request. But if you want extra security, if you want me to make absolutely sure no letter reaches you, no. I trust Marcus to handle the legal side, and I trust myself to throw away anything Derek sends. She took a breath. I'm done letting him have power over me, even the power to make me afraid. That's my girl, Luca said, and the warmth in his voice made Mara smile despite everything. Spring became summer. Ellie finished kindergarten with perfect attendance and a reading level 2 grades above average. Mara completed her first semester with straight A's and a growing conviction that social work was exactly where she belonged. The townhouse stopped feeling like Luca's property she was borrowing and started feeling like home. And somewhere in the lazy heat of July, Mara realized she'd stopped thinking of Luca as her protector and started thinking of him as simply Luca. The man who made Ellie laugh with terrible dad jokes. The man who brought Mara's favorite tea without being asked. The man who showed up to her college orientation looking ridiculously out of place in his expensive suit, but refusing to miss supporting her. They were sitting on the townhouse's small back patio one evening. Ellie asleep inside, the city sounds a distant hum. Luca had brought dinner and stayed to help with dishes, and now they were sharing a bottle of wine in the cooling evening air. Can I ask you something? Mara said, watching fireflies drift through the garden. Anything. Why haven't you tried to kiss me? Luca went very still, his wine glass halfway to his lips. Because you haven't given me permission. I'm giving it now. He set down the glass carefully, his dark eyes searching her face. Mara, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. She turned to face him fully. For months, you've been patient and kind, and everything I needed while I figured out how to be a whole person again. And I'm not completely healed. I might never be completely healed. But I'm healed enough to know what I want. And I want you. You're sure? Because if this is gratitude or obligation, Mara kissed him, cutting off the protest. It was tentative at first, both of them careful, but when Luca's hand came up to cup her face with infinite gentleness, when his other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, the kiss deepened into something real and hungry, and full of months of restrained wanting. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca pressed his forehead to hers. I've wanted to do that since the day you agreed to stay, he admitted. I know. I could see it in the way you looked at me, but I needed time. And now? Now I'm ready to try. Really try. Not just letting you be part of my life, but actually building something together. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I love you, Luca Moretti. I don't know when it happened or how, but somewhere between the sidewalk and Sunday dinners and 2 a.m. phone calls, you became essential. And I'm tired of pretending otherwise. His smile was brilliant and unguarded, the kind of genuine joy she'd only seen him show around Ellie. I love you too. Ever since you called me out for quitting your job without permission. You were furious and injured and still refusing to back down, and I thought this woman is going to ruin me in the best possible way. I probably will. I'm counting on it. They stayed on the patio until midnight, talking about everything and nothing, stealing kisses like teenagers, planning a future that felt possible for the first time. When Luca finally left, Mara stood in the doorway watching him go and felt something she'd thought Derek had killed forever. Hope. The relationship that developed over the following months was nothing like what Mara had experienced before. Luca was patient with her triggers, understanding when she needed space, fiercely protective without being controlling. They went slowly, building physical intimacy at Mara's pace, never pushing beyond what felt safe. He introduced her to his legitimate business interests, a restaurant, several properties, investments that had nothing to do with the criminal empire he ran. Showed her that he was more than the violence his world sometimes required, that he was working to transition into operations that wouldn't require looking over his shoulder constantly. "I'm getting too old for wars," he admitted one evening, "and I have too much to lose now. You, Ellie, the life we're building, that's worth more than any territory or power." What does that mean practically? It means I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations, promoting people I trust to handle the business while I focus on the legitimate side. Eventually, I want to be completely out of the life. It'll take years, but I'm committed to it. Because of us? Because I want to be the man you think I am, the man Ellie thinks I am. He took her hand. "I can't change my past, can't undo the things I've done, but I can choose what comes next, and I'm choosing a life where I don't have to worry that my work will get the people I love killed." Mara squeezed his hand. "That's all I can ask." By the time Ellie's 7th birthday arrived in October, the three of them had settled into something that looked like family. Ellie had started calling Luca by his name at some point, not Dad. Neither of them pushed that, but said with affection and trust that made Mara's heart ache in the best way. The birthday party was at Maria's house because Maria had insisted, and nobody said no to Maria Moretti. It was chaos in the best way. Too many kids, too much cake, decorations that transformed the elegant home into something from a Disney movie. Ellie was radiant, surrounded by friends from her new school, opening presents with delighted shrieks. Mara stood in the kitchen with Maria, watching through the doorway as Luca helped organize a game that had descended into gleeful anarchy. "He's good with her," Maria observed. "He is. Better than her actual father ever was." "Have you thought about making it official? Adoption, I mean." Mara had thought about it, had imagined Luca as Ellie's legal father, imagined the security that would bring, the completion. "I don't know if Luca wants that responsibility," Maria laughed. "My dear girl, that boy has been acting like Ellie's father since the day he met her. Making it legal would just be paperwork catching up with reality." She squeezed Mara's shoulder. "But it's your choice, yours and his. Just know that whatever you decide, you're already family to me." That night, after Ellie had crashed from sugar and excitement, after the last guest had left and the house was quiet, Mara found Luca on the back patio again. Their spot, somehow, where important conversations happened. "Your mother thinks you should adopt Ellie," she said without preamble. Luca looked up, startled. "She said that?" She implied it heavily. "What do you think?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "I think I'd be honored. Terrified, but honored. But Mara, that's a huge decision. Not something to rush into because my mother has opinions." "I'm not rushing. I've been thinking about it for weeks." She sat beside him. "Ellie's father is gone. Legally, emotionally, in every way that matters. And you've been more of a parent to her in 8 months than Derek was in 5 years. So yes, I think you should adopt her, if you want to." "I want to," he said immediately. "More than I can articulate. But you need to be sure. Because once I'm legally her father, I'm in this forever. No backing out, no changing your mind about us and deciding I don't get to see her anymore. It's permanent." "Good. Permanent is what we need." Mara took his hand. "I'm sure, Luca. About you, about us, about building this family together. So if you're ready, I'm ready." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Let's make it official." Marcus Webb handled the adoption paperwork with his usual efficiency. With Derek's rights already terminated and no other biological father in the picture, the process was surprisingly straightforward. By December, Luca Moretti was officially Ellie's father. They told her on Christmas morning, Luca's hands shaking slightly as he held the court documents. "Ellie, we have something to tell you," Mara started, her own voice unsteady. "You know how Luca's been part of our family for a while now?" "Yeah," Ellie said, more interested in the present she was unwrapping. Well, now he's officially your dad, if you want him to be. That got Ellie's attention. She looked up, eyes wide. Really? Like, really, really? Really, really? Luca confirmed, which means I'm not going anywhere. Ever. You're stuck with me. Ellie launched herself at him with enough force to nearly knock him over, wrapping her arms around his neck. I want you to be my dad. Can I call you Dad? Luca's eyes were suspiciously bright. Yeah, sweetheart, you can call me Dad. Mara watched her daughter and the man who'd saved them both, watched them hold on to each other like they were each other's anchor, and felt the last piece of her broken heart click into place. The spring semester brought new challenges and new growth. Mara's social work classes intensified, requiring her to do field work at a women's shelter. It was hard, confronting situations that echoed her own past, but it also felt right. She understood these women in ways her classmates couldn't, could offer real empathy alongside practical help. One evening, she came home from the shelter emotionally wrung out. A woman had come in with her 3 children, all of them bearing the marks of years of abuse. The woman had been too terrified to press charges, too convinced that leaving was impossible. Luca found Mara sitting on the kitchen floor, tears streaming down her face. Talk to me, he said, settling beside her. Mara told him about the woman, about the fear and helplessness that was too familiar. I wanted to tell her it gets better, that there's life after leaving, but she looked at me with these dead eyes, and I could see she didn't believe it was possible. Did you tell her your story? I'm not supposed to. Professional boundaries and all that. Screw professional boundaries. Luca's voice was fierce. You're living proof that escape is possible, that rebuilding is possible. If sharing your story helps even one woman find the courage to leave, isn't that worth bending a rule? Mara thought about that. Thought about the woman's face. About her children who reminded Mara so much of Ellie at that age. Scared, sad, too young to carry such weight. The next day she went back to the shelter and asked to speak with the woman privately. For an hour she told her story, all of it. Derek's escalating violence, the night she'd nearly died, Luca finding her on the sidewalk, the long road to healing, the setbacks and victories, the life she'd built from ashes. I'm not going to tell you what to do, Mara finished, but I am going to tell you that staying doesn't get easier. It doesn't get better. And there are people who will help you leave if you're ready. The woman cried, held Mara's hands and cried, and said she didn't know if she could be as brave. You're already brave, Mara told her. You came here. That's the first step. Everything else we can figure out together. 2 weeks later, the woman filed charges, entered the shelter's transition program, started building a new life. Mara told Luca about it that night, and he held her close. You're going to save so many people, he murmured. You're going to be extraordinary at this. I'm just doing what you did for me, offering a hand up when someone needs it. No, what I did was remove obstacles. What you're doing is showing people they have the strength to save themselves. That's infinitely more powerful. By the time summer rolled around again, Mara had completed her first year of social work school with honors. The townhouse had been fully renovated into exactly the home she'd envisioned. Ellie was thriving in second grade, confident and happy in ways that still made Mara tear up sometimes. And Luca had successfully transitioned out of most of his criminal operations, focusing instead on the legitimate businesses that were flourishing under his attention. They were having dinner one evening, just the 3 of them, a rare quiet night, when Ellie announced, "We should get married." Mara nearly choked on her pasta. What? You and Dad, Ellie clarified, looking at them like they were being particularly slow. You love each other. You live together. You should get married. That's what people do. Luca's eyes found Mara's across the table, amused and something else. Hopeful, maybe. That's a conversation for grown-ups, sweetheart, Mara said carefully. You are grown-ups, Ellie pointed out with 7-year-old logic. So talk about it. After Ellie went to bed, Mara and Luca ended up on the patio again, their thinking spot, their conversation place, where every important decision seemed to happen. "She's not wrong," Luca said quietly. "About us getting married. Are you proposing?" "Not like this. When I propose, it'll be planned and romantic and everything you deserve." He took her hand. "But I'm saying that I want that future. Want to make this official in every possible way. Want everyone to know that you're mine and I'm yours, and we chose each other." Mara's heart was racing. "I want that too. Eventually. But Luca, I need you to understand something. I was married before, and it was hell. The idea of signing papers that bind me to someone again, it terrifies me on a level I can't fully articulate." "Then we don't," he said simply. "We don't need a piece of paper to prove what we are to each other." "But you want it. I can see it in your eyes." "I want you happy more than I want a wedding. If being unmarried means you feel safe, then that's what we do." He squeezed her hand. "Though, for what it's worth, what we have is nothing like what you had with Derek. We're partners, equals. I can't make decisions for you, can't control you, can't hurt you and expect you to stay. That's not how this works." "I know that. Logically, I know that. But trauma isn't logical. No, it's not. So we take our time. Maybe in a year you'll feel differently. Maybe in 5 years. Maybe never. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." 3 months later, Mara woke up one morning and realized the fear was gone. Not diminished or manageable, but actually gone. The thought of marrying Luca didn't send panic through her system anymore. It just felt right. She brought it up at Sunday dinner, surrounded by Maria and what seemed like half of Brooklyn, Luca's extended family who'd welcomed Mara and Ellie with open arms. "I want to get married," she announced during dessert. The table went silent. Luca stared at her. "What?" "I want to marry you. Properly, officially, all of it, if the offer's still open." His smile could have lit the entire city. "The offer is extremely open." Maria started crying. Ellie started planning the wedding immediately, convinced she should wear a princess dress. The rest of the family erupted into congratulations and chaos. Luca pulled Mara aside while the celebration continued without them. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Really sure?" "Because I meant what I said. I don't need a wedding to know what we are." "I'm sure. I want to choose you publicly, legally, permanently. Want to stand in front of everyone and promise that I'm in this forever." She cupped his face. "You gave me my life back, Luca. Let me give you this." The wedding happened 3 months later, small and intimate despite Maria's protests. Just family and close friends in the townhouse garden, fall leaves falling around them like blessings. Ellie was flower girl, Rosa cried through the entire ceremony, and when Luca kissed his bride, it felt like every promise either of them had ever made kept. Marcus had prepared a prenup protecting Mara's interests, but Luca refused to sign it. "Everything I have is yours," he'd said. "That's what partnership means." They honeymooned upstate at the house where Mara had first felt safe, where she'd started learning to trust again. It was perfect in its simplicity, quiet mornings, long walks, conversations that lasted into the night. "What do you want? Long term?" Luca asked one evening. 5 years from now, 10 years? What does that look like for you?" Mara thought about it. "I want to finish my degree, get my license, maybe open a specialized shelter, something that focuses on single mothers escaping abuse. Want to give back what was given to me." "That's beautiful. And I want to help make it happen." "What about you? What do you want?" "This," he said simply. "You, Ellie, maybe more kids if you're open to it. A life that isn't defined by violence or territory or proving anything to anyone. Just family and peace and work that matters." "More kids?" Mara's heart skipped. "Only if you want them. I know Ellie's enough. I know your plate is full. But if you ever wanted—" "I want," Mara interrupted. "Not now, not until I finish school. But yes, I want Ellie to have siblings, want to build something even bigger and messier and more beautiful. 2 years later, Mara graduated with her social work degree. She accepted a position at a prestigious shelter and immediately began working on her plan for a specialized program. Luca backed her completely, providing seed money and connections and unwavering support. Ellie was 9 and thriving. Her early years of trauma faded to distant memory. She remembered Derek only vaguely, more as a bad dream than a real person. Luca was dad in every way that mattered, the only father she claimed. And on a crisp October morning, Mara stood in the bathroom staring at a positive pregnancy test, feeling joy and terror in equal measure. She found Luca in the kitchen making breakfast, Ellie chattering about her upcoming field trip. When their eyes met, something in Mara's expression must have given her away because Luca's face transformed into wonder. "Really?" he mouthed. She nodded. He crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around while Ellie demanded to know what was happening. "We're having a baby," Luca told their daughter. "You're going to be a big sister." Ellie's shriek of delight could probably be heard in New Jersey. The pregnancy was smooth, healthy, unremarkable in the best possible way. Mara continued working until her 7th month, then transitioned to planning the new shelter program from home. Luca became impossibly protective, fussing over her in ways that were both annoying and endearing. In May, on a warm spring evening with cherry blossoms drifting past the hospital windows, Mara gave birth to a son. They named him Marco, after the man who'd helped protect them from the beginning, who'd become family along the way. Holding her son while Luca sat beside her with Ellie curled in his lap, Mara thought about the woman who'd crawled through rain and blood 2 years ago. That woman had been broken, terrified, convinced her life was over. She'd been wrong. Her life hadn't ended on that sidewalk. It had begun. Everything that came before was just prologue to this family, this love, this hard-won peace. "What are you thinking?" Luca asked softly. "That I'm grateful. For the rain that night, for you finding me, for every choice that led us here. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They made me strong enough to deserve this." He kissed her forehead. "You always deserved this." The shelter program launched a year later to immediate success. Mara's combination of professional training and lived experience made her uniquely qualified to help women navigate the impossible journey from victim to survivor. She hired carefully, building a team that understood trauma and recovery and the long road between them. Marcus served on the board. Maria fundraised with terrifying efficiency. Luca provided connections and resources and muscle when needed to protect the women whose abusers came looking. They helped dozens of women that first year, hundreds in the years that followed, and every single one of them looked at Mara and saw possibility, saw proof that escape was real and life after abuse was worth fighting for. On the 5-year anniversary of the night Luca found Mara bleeding on a Brooklyn sidewalk, they stood on the patio of the townhouse they'd transformed into home. Ellie was inside helping Marco build a tower from blocks. The shelter was thriving. Luca's businesses were completely legitimate now, his past mostly buried under the weight of better choices. 5 years, Mara said, leaning against him. Feels like 5 minutes and 5 lifetimes. Any regrets? Not a single one. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner, but then maybe we needed to be broken first so we'd know how to fix each other. Very philosophical for a former crime boss. I contain multitudes. He turned her to face him. Thank you, Mara, for taking a chance on a stranger in an expensive suit, for building this life with me, for choosing me every single day. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for proving that good men exist, for loving me and Ellie like we were always meant to be yours. They kissed as the sun set over Brooklyn, 2 people who'd found each other in the dark and built a future in the light. Inside, their children laughed. In the distance, the city hummed with life and possibility. And Marlene Moretti, who'd once believed she'd die before she escaped, stood strong and whole and free, surrounded by the family she'd chosen and the love she'd earned. The store. And here, finally, she was home.